Last time, on Shauna Colum's channel, once again we're gonna have to split this into 2 videos, since I know the rest of you have a lot more to say about the current Genshin drama.
Yep, Hoyo let us down once again. At this point, Elena and I aren't sure if we can call ourselves Genshin fans. Especially since my boyfriend Jin got us into Wuthering Waves during the second week of Linnea's banner back in 3.0. Who's an awesome character, by the way.
I happen to work at Kuro as a security guard, by the way, so I naturally got into it around that time. They've been paying me pretty well so far. Also, I totally agree, since Linnea is basically if Mahuika and Shilonen raised the daughter together.
I was just about to say the same thing. Her exploration is miles better compared to Shilonen, since she can actually use her roller skates as long as she wants without a night soul limit.
And the same goes for the motorcycles, which literally everyone has access to, that puts Mahuika's shitstrider to shame when it comes to the exploration features, since she can only ride it for a limited amount of time, which is even worse outside of Natlan without the phlogiston bar.
Speaking of which, aren't there supposed to be horses in Mondstadt? We haven't seen a single one since the beginning of the game.
Well, the closest we've seen so far is the white horse Adeptus Zibai, who's from Liyue. Other than that, it's about time that we had mounts and gadgets that we can use literally anywhere in the overworld, unlike the Saurians and specific characters that it's locked behind to move around a lot quicker.
Oh, now that you bring it up, Aster, I remember the gadget Zibai gives us after you get her to friendship level 6 being a complete scam, since you can only ride the chariot in specific spots in Liyue, and it's mainly a reusable portable teleporter.
Yeah, at this point, I don't blame the players for quitting the game to become Kurobots, especially with how much they've been cooking with Rinashita and Lahairoi, which took Wuwa to the next level.
Exactly! Amith and Hiyuki are both crazy DPS characters with the amount of animations and their multiple amount of ults. Especially Amith, who has a total of 4, which is still wild when you compare it to majority of the Genshin characters.
You know, bro, I remember Amith had a lot of people complaining since she was being compared to Columbina, who despite still being an OP character that brings lunar teams together, could have had better animations for a moon goddess. And most importantly, she's ranked 3rd of the Fatui Harbingers, which is higher than Arlecchino, and the Welkin moon that's been teased since the beginning of the game.
As much as I agree with that statement, I don't know if Hoyo should have went as far as making her free as a YouTuber named Saint Tontus claimed that she should have. Setsi also stated that her animations are no different than a version 1 character.
Yeah, you have a good point, Jin, since literally every lunar team wants her. Well, other than Nouvelette, since he can always use Furina, who he benefits more from if Columbina needs to be on another team. Also, from what I've been hearing, Saint Tontus isn't really that trustworthy since he's known for making some bad takes.
Yeah, I also remember hearing that he complains about either Zenless Zone Zero or Wuwa being more skill-based, since you have to know when to switch to your characters. While Glazing Wuwa, which does the same exact thing if I recall correctly. Honestly, it's been a while since I've seen one of his videos. But one thing I do remember is a YouTuber named Pharos complaining that Varka, who will most likely have Nicole as his best-in-slot support, having his burst animation being too quick and uninteresting compared to what you see in Wuwa.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Aster, since he's another character that's been hyped since the beginning of the game. Although his gameplay isn't bad, as the best Anemo main DPS that we have surpassing Xiao, which I can tell Ziox, who has MC6, was punching the air. There are still a lot of better DPS characters to pull for. There's also the fact that Venti, who got buffed through Hexarai, plus his 3rd signature bow in a row, is another character Varka relies on, which benefits Day 1 players the most that have him.
Yeah, unfortunately, sis, that's one of the reasons why I'm unwilling to pull for Varka. But I've heard that Prune might be a good alternative support for him.
I agree with you, Lucian, since Venti's rerun was alongside Durin when Columbina was literally in the next batch. I hope I ain't crazy for saying this, but if you ask me, they should have given us that femboy for free, even though he's an Archon, since I don't know if that many people pulled for him.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Jin. Since it's about time they started giving those out with the game surpassing over 100 characters after Skirk's release. Especially since Star Rail and even Triple Z have been doing it. By the way, Aloy doesn't count since she isn't a Genshin character, nor does she play like an actual 5-star.
Her Horizon collab with Genshin is laughable, to the point where she makes Star Rail's Fate collab look like a masterpiece.
Right! I saw the video where a YouTuber named Shy Guy High compared her trailer with Wuwa's Cyberpunk collab, and it looks like a typical 4-star trailer from back in the early days. And speaking of which, we were mentioning earlier before everyone else got here that Lohen should have at least been a free limited 5-star if he wasn't going to go on the standard banner like the rumors have been saying he would, since Nicole is the main push for this version. At this point, we desperately need a free 10-pull daily login because 60 throughout the entire patch is hardly enough to guarantee a 5-star unless you get really lucky, or if you have some pity left from the last banner. Why in the fuck would they only come by during the anniversary and Lantern Rite when the other games like Star Rail, which has been doing theirs since launch, and also Zenless and Wuwa at the beginning of every patch?
Well, it's already bad enough that those usually don't start till the worst possible time. Like how it was after Mahuika and Citlali's horrible first banner phase where they were released together ended. Which they better not do again.
Yeah, they should have had those 2 banners last for the entire patch like Star Rail did for Cyrene and Yao Guang. Other than the HP inflation and the meta revolving around Notlon mechanics, it was a horrible time to be a Hoyo fan due to the amount of drama that took place, including the English VAs being muted, which ruined last year's Lantern Rite, as well as a few other events due to the SAG-AFTRA strike that lasted for nearly a year.
The HP inflation, however, wasn't as bad compared to Star Rail, which power crept basically all of the older DPS characters when Amphorius first came out in 3.0. Oh, for sure. I remember how upset the community was when they heard about Castorese's global passive that can revive anyone, even if she isn't on the team.
Oh yeah! I remember a lot of the content creators quit around that time. And also the fact that the story has gotten way too long, thanks to one man whose name we don't need to mention at this point, which forced them to add a skip button back in 3.4 during Phaenon's release, and the shitty Fate collab.
Yeah, good thing they knew to give everyone early access to Elation Trailblazer, because there's no way I'm sitting through that bullshit after experiencing the crowd yell, "Let him die!" for like 5 minutes straight in the 3.2 mission with Castorese and Anaxa, which made no sense being thrown together.
That was also around the time I quit playing through the story along with everyone else for the sake of our time and mental health, since these missions have been getting even more ridiculous. Good thing Genshin knew not to hire Xiaoji, since I really wouldn't want him to ruin that game even more.
You know, Rosella, all Star Rail needs to do is follow their blueprint and split them into separate missions, instead of putting everything into one big mission that a lot of us don't have the time and patience to sit through. One example I can give is the 3.1 mission, where the first half should have ended with the first encounter against the Flame Reaver, and the second half end with the final encounter against him, alongside Midei. And Midei's farewell and tribute story should have been separate interlude missions, like what Wuwa has been doing. There, problem solved!
I know my friend Atsuko would have given the same exact solution if she were here. It's a shame that Hoyo most likely won't listen either way.
Speaking of which, review bombing other apps that have nothing to do with anything Hoyo does, as well as now doing the same to the headquarters on Google Maps, like a bunch of pendejos, isn't going to make the situation any better.
Well, if you ask me, Shibalanke, the best way to send a message is to just don't play either of their games, or spend a fuck ton of money on C6 characters, which I know a lot of dumbass people and content creators will do regardless when Nicole drops.
Alas, this is one of the main reasons why there's no hope for this community. The dev team will continue to scam players worse than how Michael Jordan scams NBC, with shitty anniversary rewards and shitty-ass Wonderland, which I'm surprised that some people still play to this day. While Dawei chills in one of his yachts like he's Klay Thompson from the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, about what you said earlier, Aster. It's been getting harder every year to support Hoyo after seeing Wuwa, which has a lot of the quality of life we mentioned that Genshin players have been asking for years. Also, the bosses in that game put Genshin to shame. Especially Tactical Hologram, which is what I believe inspired Stygian Onslaught.
However, despite Stygian requiring a specific character mechanic for each of the bosses at a higher difficulty, Wuwa is actually much harder and skill expressive since they actually do a lot more damage and have ults that can one-shot you if you're not careful.
You know Shibalanke. I've cleared every other boss at the highest difficulty, but the one boss I'm struggling with the most is Sigillum, who has 2 phases with a shit ton of health and flies around the area like Hyvacia.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Jin. I used Hiyuki to clear most of them since she can freeze, which makes things a bit easier. Unlike Genshin, where you can only freeze minions despite having very few bosses that support it. Hiyuki is basically if Ayaka and Raiden Shogun did the fusion dance together. But so much better if you compare the two of them separately. She also put Skirk's simpler animations to shame, since other than her 2 ults, she has a lot more flashy animations.
Yeah, you can feel the difference with a lot of the Genshin characters, like with Zebai, for example, who basically just spams her normal attacks and enhanced skill with her burst somewhere in between her rotation whenever she has it ready, which doesn't look as interesting. But then again, it's meant to be based around setting up elemental reactions. Although I agree that the animations could still be better. Which now brings me to Wuwa's Cyberpunk collab, which is looking to be an amazing patch. Yeah, I'm really hoping that they learn from Star Rail's mistakes with the Fate collab by not fucking up the story and adding so much unnecessary and low-effort bullshit to it. I still can't believe to this day that they used some generic NPC model named Miss Note as the caster. They even had the audacity to use assets from Faenon's homeland, which looks a lot like Mondstadt, as Britain, which is Saber's homeland. And worst of all, most of the mission was muted because of the dreamscape of some shitty old silent horror film that they entered.
We can't also forget the fact that Furina from Timu-looking femboy Misha was the writer. That did absolute jack shit but talk with Pom-Pom the entire time.
Please don't remind me of that ever again, Jin. I was so disappointed when they showed that scene around the end.
What were they thinking?
Another scene that disappointed me was when that old-ass man was revealed to be the Berserker, which is just the Swarm King weekly boss created by Ruan Mei. Like, where the fuck were Clara and Sverog the entire time? Which would have been more than perfect for this.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
If you ever, by some miracle, come across this video, Kudo, please don't make the same mistake as Hoyoverse. Well, they showed the cyberpunk city design in the trailer, so there might be even more surprises coming our way. I haven't watched the show yet, so I'm planning on doing it with Shibalanke, our friend Hannah, and my sister Mei Ren before the live stream so we can get a better understanding.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either, so Rayana invited me as well as 2 other friends to watch it with her. By the way, they're giving us Rebecca for free, who is looking to be a nice support made for Lucy, who will be the main banner for players to pull on.
But as for David, depending on his involvement in the story, I fear that he'll be getting the same treatment as Lancer from the Fate collab.
By the way, I'm thinking now would be a good time to end the video since we've been talking for long enough. If you guys enjoyed today's discussion in the Garden of Roses, don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe for more of our content in the future.
Man, it feels a lot nicer to have a peaceful session with no interruptions compared to the last time I was here a year ago. Good thing we have Lucian to thank for helping Rosella with keeping the server in check.
Yep, that's my brother for you. For those of you saving for the upcoming second phase banners in Wuthering Waves and the Cyberpunk collab afterwards, we're wishing you good luck with your polls.
However, for the Genshin banners, you're really gonna need a miracle knowing the amount of pulls that we're about to receive throughout the entire patch for those of you that are purely free to play. As if most of the community didn't use up their pulls on Linnea, or the 2 other Nod Cray characters that they might have missed out on for this current Abyss rotation.